Hi, my name's Steve Dalby,
I'm Marijn.
and this is WhiskyAtEase.
Chill. Hey everybody!
Are you serious?
Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 3. So this is going to be the final of our first journey, our journey that took us from the Isle of Mull all the way to Elgin, and now we're gonna hit the third base.
We're just working into the car park of our final location.
Exactly. So
Which is in a place called Furres, which is very close to Elgin.
Furries?
Oh my god, seriously?
Furres.
Oh, Furres. Furres.
F-E-R-R-E-S. And this time it's a distillery.
Okay.
It's a distillery that focuses on smoke.
Ooh.
And it's a distillery with a real history. Still the same bottle that you saw last time. And of course what we need to know is why it is linked to that one. Okay.
So maybe let's do a quick recap.
Oh, here we go. Play
So-
chess with the bottles again, are we? Where did we
Yes.
start with? Okay, we
So
started
we
with
did start with Tobermory on the Isle of Mull.
the Isle of Mull, west coast of
West
Scotland.
Coast.
West
Side.
Coast.
West Side.
West Side is the best.
We
Yes.
then drank and tasted.
This one, because Tobermory has a peated version called the Leche.
The day.
The Ledake, yes. The guys at Gordon and Mcphail bought a barrel and did their own
But
stuff
they bought
with
the
it.
spirit.
Well, they
and put
bought
it in
the
their own
spirit.
barrel. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So that was that. And now, this is our third leg of our journey.
So what happened is this. In 1898, there was a distillery created in Forez, okay, called Benromach, okay, that created a number of whiskies. It went through a number of ownerships. Diageo was the kind of last people that kind of owned it. But in 1983, they closed it down. So
Okay.
the distillery closed down. And for 10 years, it didn't create any whiskey at all.
I kind of get that because 1982 was such a superb year wherein such great things happened in the world. Like,
Really?
I was born there, so of course 1983 can't be as good as 1982. So
Completely irrelevant.
exactly.
Unless, of course,
Okay.
your parents put the money up to...
No, they didn't.
Okay.
No.
All right, so 1983 is a great year, so now we know that Marijn is way longer than me. Wow, you're way too young. Way too young. Or I'm way too old, one or the other.
Whatever you say, boomer.
Anyway, 1983 it closed down. But that allowed Gordon and Mcphail to reach a dream, which was to own a distillery. So the Benromach distillery was bought by Gordon and Mcphail in 1993.
Okay.
So in 1993, these guys moved from being an independent bottler, but they still are, of course, to actually owning their own distillery. 1993, Gordon and Mcphail now actually have their own distillery, which brings a huge amount of end-to-end quality control. So now not only can they just buy a spirit that say, hey, that's a nice spirit and we'll put it in our barrels, but now they can actually produce the spirit that they want to put in their barrels. And so they created and made lots and lots of cool decisions around this Benromach distillery. If you go to their website, it's a great journey. They've got a nice virtual tour in these COVID times, of course, be able to see what's actually happening. But their ethos around this is that there are 4 ingredients that make a whiskey: barley,
Sure. Yeah.
water,
Sure.
yeast,
Yes.
and the human touch. Which is brilliant.
Okay. Yes. I was thinking about it. So what's the fourth one?
It's wonderful.
Air or okay.
They basically
Yes.
make whiskey by hand.
Okay.
They fill their barrels by human touch. So everything is actually done by a human. It's great when you're creating a whiskey. you to put the barley into water and you warm it up to a certain temperature, and then you mix it around a little bit. Okay, but that mixing
They do it
done,
themselves.
not
No,
like that.
okay,
No,
no.
but they do wind a wheel which turns the thing around. It's not kind of
Really?
turn the switch on, blah, 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 and turn it off again. It's wonderful. It's on my list of places to visit. So in the
Things
summer,
to do. Turn the wheel at the Benromach
yeah,
distillery.
that is true.
Okay.
But in the summer, I hope to go to the distillery. It's really is quite a really neat way to do it. So as I said, started 1898. 1893 it actually closed down. Gordon and Mcphail bought it in 1993, but they didn't bring their first whiskey out until 1998 because it took them 5 years to get the whiskey the way they wanted it to do. So they took that awesome quality control that creates what we've tasted today, that discovery range, and that concept of saying, hey, we can get a whiskey and we can put more flavour in it for our customers. And they said, hey, no, that was not the right whiskey. Hey, no, that was not the right whiskey. So it took 5 years to issue their first whiskey, which was a 2009. And now, of course, 1999. And then in 2009, they bring their 10-year out, which is what this one is. This is basically a 10-year-old peated whiskey, okay? And in terms of the quality control, end-to-end process, I kind of really trust this, you know? Gordon and Mcphail, the people that kind of say, hey, spirit, barrel.
You know, after that
later.
raving review we did in the last episode,
I
think it's fairly sure that you kind of trust them.
I
yeah.
do, absolutely. Really, really like this. Yeah, it's very popular at the moment because of its 10 year. So again, now we're there. That is the Benromach as the third part of our journey. So we start off with a spirit that is not peated in a distillery on the west of Scotland. We then talk about an organisation and a company that takes that spirit, puts it in their own barrels, treats it with lots and lots of respect, and then eventually gets to buy their own distillery, which basically brings us on a journey of 3 bottles, of which we now need to taste this one.
Mm-hmm. So for that, we need glasses.
We need glasses.
Two glasses. And the fun thing is, we already tasted that in our podcast,
We did.
Office 365 Distilled. And we were both blown away, and we said that this, for me at least, this was the best whiskey of the year. The
We
best
did,
whiskey
yes.
that I drank all year.
We did bear in mind that we did do the Ledaig 10 year as well, but that was the year before.
The 18-year-old,
Yeah,
the
didn't
Ledaig
count,
18-year-old, yes. Which also blew me away.
But that was a different year. So
That was a different
This
year.
was this year's
Exactly,
blown away.
yes. This is the year 1 after COVID, so yes, exactly.
All right, cool. It's got a great name. It's Peat Smoke. I just think that, modern
Yes.
marketing.
If I have to say something bad about this, is that I don't like how they done the logo and the design of the label of the bottle.
And that's because Marijn puts sight against taste. Who cares what it looks like?
Don't care, still don't care.
It
No, I
tastes
know,
awesome.
absolutely. But that's if I really have to say something bad about it, it is that I just don't like the style.
I
the
actually
logo.
do understand. I was looking at wine labels the other day, and the same thing. There's a lot of modern wine labels, and they don't carry that same elegance of a wine. The thing, I've said this before about whiskey, the thing that amazes me is how long this water has taken to get to this stage. So 10 years ago, this water was drawn and mixed up with barley, and then obviously distilled and put into a barrel, and 10 years later it appears in a bottle and I drink it.
It is weird because if you would just take some water, put it in a glass, store it somewhere for 10 years, you wouldn't drink that water from that glass.
No, God!
No, it wouldn't.
That is crazy that this just gains so much power, complexity, flavor, all the crazy nice things.
But what the point that I'm trying to get to here is what you said, is to say that, when you get a modern label on it, it kind of doesn't carry that
Exactly. So we've got
majesty that
a
10
whiskey
years.
that is 120 years old. Well, this is probably not the label that they put on that in 1898.
Absolutely not.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't like the label, although I just love the whiskey. It is, as I said before, easy, hands down, best whiskey I've tasted all year. And I'm so happy to do that once more, just because of you, my dear audience.
Oh, I'm just going to go and pick up my notes while you just talk
Yes,
about what that smells
good.
like.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, leaving me all alone.
Terrible, with a whiskey.
With a whiskey and a bottle.
Yeah,
and a
this
bunch
is
of...
our model, just so that I've got a note as to
Exactly.
the way we
Yeah.
want to play with this.
What do we get? I get lots of alcohol.
You get
Lots of alcohol vapor that needs to go down. It's kind of a taste that doesn't go all over the board. So you definitely got that that peated smoke, as they advertise on the label. Of course you get that. But I don't get that overly bourbony or overly sherry or something like that. It is kind of in the middle of everything.
Correct, and they don't believe that it should be flavoured by, you know, a second fill kind of barrel. So these are first fill bourbon barrels to give it the colour, and obviously you can tell that the peat on this is, you know, from the grain itself, not from the char.
It's coming from under my toes. that's peated flavor that comes out of the ground into my body. It's almost like an evangelical experience that it just crawls into my mouth, into my stomach, into my brain, hitting all my taste notes.
You're saved, my friend. You are saved.
And it just fills me with joy. Yes.
You know, you're absolutely right. It does grow. So you take that first taste, and the smoke starts kind of at the back of the tongue, just down here. And
but in a
works
very
its way around.
earthy way, a very earthy, peated kind of way. Not like, for example, the leche that we had. Not like anything else that comes from Isla, for example. This is a very earthy, in no way islands-like peatiness.
It is different, even though
Yes.
it's only, I don't know, 40 miles away, if you cross the water from, you know, Islay to Tobermory and then across to Inverness. It's the other side of Scotland. It's going to be different.
Absolutely, and you
it's
get
different
that
in such a nice way.
So earthy, that tone that brings that beat forward.
What's interesting about this is it's not a harsh whiskey, but it's quite smoky. So that in its own right brings a level of thirst as it disappears. In terms of the fruit, it's there, but the fruit doesn't really show itself until the end of the finish, until the back end of the finish. There's a little bit there on the nose.
Yeah, but not that much. The nose is pretty closed. You don't get tons of flavor on that nose.
No, I get fruit. I mean, it's there
Yes,
underlying
of course, but
everything.
it's not like what we had with the Gordon and Mcphail the last time.
They're all different.
They're all different, but that really already blows you away from the nose on.
Let's talk about this.
Yes.
All right, so we have peat in there. We have the background of fruit, which basically means in terms of its smoothness, it's a kind of 4. You know, it is quite smooth because that peat is not going to grab you by the ankles and tip you upside down.
No,
it's there part of that process.
But I do get lots of pepper.
Yes, there's spiciness there, but I don't think it's taken away from the smoothie. It's not making it harsh.
It's not making it harsh, but it is making it a touch spicy.
Yes, it is, but I think it's on the taste.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, none of that on the finish.
No, and so that smokiness is there, which is great, and it does roll around the tongue. It is a really, really nice experience. Not quite as evangelical as yours, but it definitely is a nice experience. Okay. And then that's where the fruit starts to come in. It's not, again, big fruity whiskey. It's actually very subtle and specific. And again, I think once you start to get a lot of smoke, then basically it balances it out with the fruit. And then you get that finish. Now, think
It's
about
a trade-off, yeah.
It is. No,
so you
always
got that
a
peat
trade-off.
and that fruit tipping over the scale.
But if you ask me if this was a complex whiskey, I'd have to say no.
No, straightforward, no nonsense. This is
Yeah.
what you're gonna get.
Peated.
Although,
Peated.
yes, very much so. But if you compare the nose with the taste and the finish, those are three very distinct experiences that you get.
But that's a requirement for any whiskey, isn't it? You
Course.
absolutely need to make sure that the nose is separated from the taste, is separated from the finish.
Yeah, but
'Cause
you
if
got
you
a
don't
bunch
have
of
that, you've
you
got
got a
water.
bunch of whiskeys that are really got that all tied down, where the nose and the taste and the finish are really one and the same experience. While here, I've got three distinct experiences
Yeah.
next to each other.
Yeah. I
So
think
that kind
adds
of
value.
adds to a level of complexity. Now, the taste itself is not that super complex. It just gives you bang for your buck. It just gives you all that spicy, peaty goodness. It's just brilliant.
It's definitely a go-to peated whiskey. It's designed to be produced en masse as opposed to be uniquely and independently bottled.
True.
But I think it's got the value of that experience that Gordon and Mcphail bring to it. So that experience of 120 years of taking a whiskey, giving it that flavour, pumping it full of depth without the complexity, because a mass-produced whiskey is that much more difficult. And they've succeeded. I think it's a really, really nice tasting whiskey. When you look at the way this is produced, they actually use different mashes to feed the mash afterwards. So the first time they go through the still, and the second time you get a different level of sugar out of it and a different level of starch out of it. And the last one, which is done at higher temperature, they use as the basis for the next whiskey, which provides a level of consistency.
Of course.
In terms of the way they do the process. And again, 5 years before they issued their first spirit, they got it right. They have that level of
says
consistency.
something about the dedication that the people that are running this have, and the love that they have for whiskey and creating a superior brand that is gonna blow us all out of the
I
water.
think I agree. I think that's really quite cool. So that's the end of our journey.
Okay.
We've done 3 whiskies. Let's pull them up again, just because we like playing
Left to right.
chess. Hey. So we started here. We started in Tobermory. Okay. We talked about a non-peated whiskey, and we worked out how that was linked to the Dague.
Yeah.
All right, Le Leche. Let's put that one here. So that's where we went to next. But that introduced us to somebody that deals with quality of whiskey in terms of that Gordon and Mcphail. And
While
then we
we're
ended
not
up with-
saying that Tobermory is not quality, we're not saying that at all. This is an amazing dram. Definitely.
Absolutely. But of course, what we're saying is that when you're an independent bottler, you do things slightly differently. And that's what we can see in this whiskey. And then,
Well, what I would say is, if you just have the chance to just play with one barrel and just go crazy on that one barrel, and you don't have to worry about consistency, you can just do wild things.
and that's the value of
And
the
that is
independent
what
bottler.
they do. Yes, exactly.
But when we see this quality from this spirit and that experience put into their own distillery, you end up with this Benromach, this peated smoked whiskey, which consistently is going to be brilliant. All right, this is really, really good. But that's our journey. 3 episodes, 3 whiskies, 3 locations, 3 organisations,
27 attempts at recording.
45 charges of the battery.
Yeah.
We've had a great experience putting this together and learning from it, and we will get better, I'm fairly certain and sure. But let's talk about that journey. So we started on the west coast of Scotland and we ended up on the east coast of Scotland. And I think it was brilliant, and I hope you've enjoyed it. But where are we going to go next?
That's a good question. So I think you all have to stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll go on our second journey into the world of whiskey. So we'll see you then. My name is Marijn Somers.
My name is Steve Dalby, and as a spoiler alert, in March we're off to Japan. But that's something for the future, and a journey for the future. Subject to COVID, of course, but there you go. Anyway,
Exactly.
bye from Steve.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.